Harrison Jr. Touchdown! Marvelous Mark!
Ball next to the end zone, dropped it in for Franklin. A majestic touchdown!
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast. All right, good evening, everybody. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing the Natty podcast. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday night. We are back again with another CFF live stream here live on YouTube. Hope everybody who is there in the chat and watching is having a wonderful, wonderful night. If you want to make my night even more wonderful here, y'all can do me a quick favor here and make sure you go ahead and like the video as well as share it with a bunch of your college football buddies. Maybe they don't play fantasy football. That's totally fine. We are here to just hang out, talk college football in the background, have a CFF live draft going on here, provide us plenty of things to talk about here. We're here to just have a good time. We also got some time here before the start of the draft here in about 6-7 minutes. So go ahead if you have any questions, load those into the chat. We'll try to hit a few of those before we get started here. But first and foremost, I need to introduce who we have on as our guest this week. It is Mr. Zachary Hall. You might know him on Twitter at CFF Champs. He has joined the Fantasy Points CFB team over there. Zachary, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, man, Jared. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, dude. Again, we're here to just have fun. We got a draft going here in the background. Why don't you, for those people who may not be familiar with some of your past work and everything like that, why don't you try to explain what you've done in the past and what you kind of plan on doing now that you're with Fantasy Points over there?
Yeah, so I want to say back in 2017, I really jumped into the game here. I started my own website, cffchamps.com. Ran that for a few years. Really just wanted to. There was some content out there, but not like there is today. It's really cool to see what it is today. But I just kind of wanted to have some sort of throw out some rankings. I do a lot around pulling in data, so just kind of I started to do a lot of that kind of stuff. More analytical work around it. So I did that for a couple years, and I joined Bainbridge, Mike Bainbridge and Josh on the Patreon there for a year as well. And then I took a step back for a few years, still been doing a lot of stuff on the back end, behind the scenes, I guess. And Josh approached me this summer and started talking about maybe doing some DFS stuff this fall with him at Fantasy Points. Got me kind of excited to jump back in the game. So that's kind of where it started. And we've been talking, and I think we got some cool stuff that we're going to be able to do this fall. We'll definitely have some DFS stuff. I think he's going to have some prop stuff on there. I'm going to bring some of the stuff I've had in the past. So we're going to have a matchup report. I think that's going to be pretty cool this fall. That's going to help guys with, I think CFF, the leagues, it's going to help in some DFS stuff. Might even be some benefit there on some props. So we'll have that. We'll have rankings and projections in season 2. So pretty excited to kind of jump back into that and providing those each week. We've been talking, so we're just trying to think of everything we can do this fall and to kind of help guys out with their leagues and with DFS. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited to get back in it.
I'm excited to have you back into the fold, dude. I haven't been around long enough to have seen your website in its prime and everything like that. But I've talked to Bainbridge and guys like that before who told me about some of the stuff you did. It really is kind of phenomenal stuff. Glad to have you back, dude. The matchup reports, Josh teased that on the Burning the Red Shirt podcast recently. And when I heard that, I'm like, that's awesome. That's brand new. It's fresh. It's not something that anybody's doing. So I'm super excited to really see that get kicked off the ground, especially with some of those higher scoring games that'll be involved with CFF in season. It's going to help a lot with starting and sitting. It's going to be fantastic. And you touched on the fact that how much the industry has grown. I mean, I've been here last couple of years, and like the amount we've grown, the amount of just support there is now. Like again, like a lot of times, like you were running your own website back then, but like now we have like bigger companies starting to pick up college fantasy, whether it is DFS, whether it is props, but also some are kind of investing into just the college fantasy redraft dynasty game as well. Just so much support out there, not only just from the companies, but also the people who are watching this, people who subscribe to our stuff. It really is crazy how much it's grown.
Yeah, it's awesome to see, because I know when I jumped in, I mean, there were like CFF site was going, Bainbridge had his Patreon. There were some other things out there. But just now the amount of content that's being produced is really cool to see. Like you do a great job on these podcasts. I love listening to them. Burning the Red Shirt is awesome. The CFF site's doing their conference previews. There's just so much, and it's just really cool to see how it's evolved since I kind of was in it and left. And I'm excited now to just kind of be a part of it again. I know I've kind of stayed in touch with some of the guys over the last few years, but I'm excited to really be a part of what's happening, because it does feel like there's a lot of cool things going on, and I really like all the voices we have right now. You got to get a unique perspective on some things. There's just, I mean, we're trying to figure out what to do with 133 teams, and so it's always kind of nice to hear what other people are seeing or what they've heard. Or it's hard to do a lot of research on all those teams, so it's cool to see where this little CFF industry has started to grow to.
Yeah, and you know what one of my favorite things is, and like I say this as somebody who has, again, this is my third year doing the show, love it, or my third season doing the show, absolutely love it and everything. I do consider myself one of the like younger members of the space and everything, but like one of my favorite things is seeing like guys who used to DM me all the time, guys who were just, just listeners, they were just players, they liked the game, but they really started to get into it, now starting their own content out there. Like a lot of you who are listening right now are fully aware of who Volume Pigs is. He's been putting out a ton of great articles throughout the year. He was just somebody who would just come into these drafts, kind of like a lot of you are here tonight who are listening, who, just ask questions and everything, fell in love with the game and decided, like, I'm going to go out on my own. So again, his stuff's great. Another one of our guys over at C2C, he was a very active member for us, Luke Probosco. He just started his own Substack, which is called Tips, Trends, Stakes. I'll have to type that out in the chat, but you should go subscribe to him over there as well. Again, I love promoting guys who are just getting started, because again, like without guys in the industry, like when I first got started, when me and Xavier first put out our podcast, if it weren't for guys like John Lobb, like Mike Bainbridge, putting us out there and saying like, hey, these guys are doing a really good job, none of it would have happened. So like, again, just seeing the industry grow more and more every offseason has been absolutely awesome. Our draft is getting started here. Again, we talked too much about the industry there, so we'll answer some of those questions y'all left in the chat here as the first couple of picks go through here. I went Malachi Corley. You guys know me. I like going wide receiver early. If I can grab Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malachi Corley, I am a happy man. So, Zach, it's coming up to you on the first pick here. First of all, who are you picking? And then I guess the follow-up question to that is, what do you typically look for in the first round this year?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go. So this is my first non-slow draft, so the pressure of the clock is probably gonna really get to me here. I'm out of practice, so going Marvin Harrison here. He's actually my wide receiver one. Typically in these best balls, this first round, I'm just I have my top 10, 12 guys that I just, kind of have them ordered out. How can I feel like Harrison at that spot's pretty solid. I know you like receivers early here. I typically like to go running back, or if I can get a good QB kind of towards the end of this, I might go QB. Like if I'm at the end of the the first round. But I liked Harrison's value right there just because he's my top wide receiver. So another guy I would have considered would have been Rasheen Ali. I like taking him. He actually might be. I get this changes every single day, but he might be my RB1 this year. I like Judkins too, so it's usually between those two guys. Kind of depends on how I wake up that day, who I have in that first spot. But those would have been two of the guys I considered there. If we're talking though, like a redraft, I typically really like to start strong with the running back, and I like taking quarterbacks early too. So I tend to take receivers earlier in a best ball, but quarterbacks maybe earlier in a redraft.
Oh, fair enough. Again, running back is usually like over the years, like running back has been heavily featured in the first round. That's something that's definitely changed this year with really only Judkins, Ali, and Sanders going off in the first round versus now we're looking at it. Now we're looking at those are the only three going off versus some years you'll have like 6, 7, 8 running backs come off in the first round. Quarterback people wait on. Wide receiver people start to hit in like the second, third round. Quarterback very heavy in the first round this year. Marvin Harrison Jr. going to 1-7 surprised me a ton. I guess some people, maybe some of the people there who were drafting didn't realize he was still on the board, assuming that he would be off by the time it came to their pick. So I think he got excellent value there at 1-7 because I've never seen him go that late. Can you make the draft less blurry? Brett, I would check your YouTube settings, like the little gear in the bottom. You might have us on a low resolution because the way I'm looking at it, it looks like it's pretty clear on my end. So it might be something with your computer, Brett. All right, Zach, you're back on the clock here. We'll go through our second round picks and then we'll start answering some of these questions in the chat. Don't worry, y'all. I did not forget about you guys there in the chat. So what are you looking at here, Zach?
So I was kind of hoping I would have Allen fall to me, but that doesn't look like that's going to happen. So I think I'm going to go. I'm kind of torn between 3 guys right here. I think I'm going to go Shipley just because I want to get one of my running backs that is in the top 10 for me. I thought about Odunze and McMillan as well for Washington. Probably would have won Odunze if I wanted to go receiver, but I feel pretty good with where I'm at with Harrison at receiver. So yeah, wanted to make sure I could get a running back. And I think Shipley, I don't think he's like a real sexy name, but I think he's going to be, when I look at kind of what he can do, he's going to be pretty consistent week over week. So I like having that at a running back early here.
I assume that you're not concerned about Phil Maffa at all. I know a couple guys, Eric Froton specifically, have definitely been hyping up Phil Maffa's role in the offense this upcoming year. I assume you don't, given the fact that you took Shipley in the second round, you're not worried about that at all?
I'm not, no. Yeah, I guess I'm not. And maybe this is a situation where handcuff him a little bit later on in the draft. I don't even know if I've seen him go in any of the drafts I've been in. So feels like I could grab him later if I needed to with Shipley there. I think another running back that I might have overlooked, again, the pressure of the clock. I like Bangera, who you just took there.
Yes, sir.
That probably would have been a pretty solid running back selection where I was at as well. So I think that's pretty good pick for you there.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to hit running. I'm trying to hit running back a little bit earlier in this draft to see how it kind of falls or see how it goes for me here. But there's a wide receiver here on the board that I'm probably gonna grab here if it comes back to me. That now that I have Malachi Corley, I feel very good about trying to go for an upside pick here in the third round. Yep, there he goes. Give me Jamari Thrash, wide receiver out of Louisville. If all goes well, I get Malachi Corley, Western Kentucky's number 1 wide receiver, and I got Jeff Brom's number 1 wide receiver right there. So love that start for me at receiver right there, and I get a action hero in Mr. Say Bangura. I'm liking my start a lot right here. All right, as it makes its way over to your pick here, Zach, let me go back in the chat here, see if I can find some questions here. Start with Mr. Benjamin Wagner. Do we really expect Cardwell to hurt Jaden Ott's value like most are predicting? So Zach, I'll throw this over to you first. how do you view that California running back room? Obviously, a top 25 running back for CFF last year, phenomenal freshman year, great out of the backfield, but they did bring in quite a few running backs out of the portal, and Spavital is known for running a committee. How do you kind of view that running back room?
Yeah, I have Ott as the RB1, but I have not. I've maybe taken him maybe just one or twice later in the draft if he fell to me. You touched on it. I mean, that running back by committee. I just don't know if there's going to be a ton of value. I think the thing I like about Ott is give me 1 second here, is I think they'll use him in the passing game, which I think we can see a little bit of value there in that system. But that's just one running back room I've kind of stayed away from, because his running back room has always been really hard to predict what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of steered clear of Ott, and I mean, I guess if Cardwell does kind of take over, I would say the same thing about him. Like, neither one of those guys I would probably spend too much value on in a draft. It's going to be later on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, I've definitely knocked down Ott as the offseason's gone along, but also like have been kind of keeping my ear to the ground over there. And it still sounds like he's going to be like the number one guy over there at Cal. Now, it's just a question of, one, how much do you think Spavital absolutely nukes that offense? Well, that's to be seen. I think he's kind of become a value a little bit. Again, I'd have to look again as to where he's been going off in recent drafts. I haven't updated our ADP in a while, but I feel like he's been going late enough to where I haven't seen him go obnoxiously high like he was going at the beginning of the offseason. So you're probably getting definitely a better value now than you were earlier in the offseason. Wolf, Audric Estime, man, he used to be going the 10th round. He has shot up draft boards recently, all the way to the 3rd round. I love Estime. That is quite the jump there. Ben,
where do you have him? Is he a top 15 for you, Estime?
He is my RB 18, I believe. 17, RB 17 for me. There's just a ton of vacated production at Notre Dame this year, because between Buckner, between Drew Pye, between Logan Diggs, like I believe, between those three, 250 carries have opened up at Notre Dame. Now, obviously, they're planning on passing more, so don't give all of those to Estime. And also, you have Chris Tyree, the running back there, switching over to the slot receiver. So, yeah, they're still going to give him some backfield carries a little bit, but that's still even more carries that are opening up back there. It's just set up greatly for Estime to have just a huge volume play. So I'm feeling very good about that. Again, 3rd round, first running back, maybe, but I like the pairing with Hammond. That's a really good pairing right there. So let's see. Other questions. Ben, we'll come back to your Colorado question later. I'm trying to get some other people in here. Austin Smith asks, could Drake May get the Brennan Armstrong treatment in 2023? Basically, he is saying Brennan Armstrong got absolutely nuked by a bad head coach, coordinator hire last season. Can the same thing happen to Drake May this year with the hire of Chip Lindsey, which most people are not super excited about? What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, that's been I've gone so back and forth on where he's gonna land this year. I mean, obviously the concern is, what's that system going to look like? Is he going to have the volume that he needs to? Another thing I've kind of been looking at is how he ended the year last year. So Drake May, for me, I still have him in my top 10. I want to say he's close to the top 5. He might be QB6. But I have not taken him once yet, just because I'm so unsure of what that offense is actually going to do. Are they going to utilize him? I'm trying to pull something up right now around him, but I know the QB1 in that system has not been great. We've had a year or two where he's done all right. So when he was his first year at Troy, Caleb Barker did all right. He threw for 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, had a couple rushing touchdowns. Nick Mullins at Southern Miss had a solid year, threw for 4,400 yards with him there as a DOC. But when you look at everything else, it's not good. I mean, it's not there's not a lot of value there. I do think because it's Drake May, they're probably gonna hopefully use his strength, and there's gonna be some value. But he's a guy I don't have one share of at all this year.
The only shares of Drake May I have so far this year are ones I've held over from Dynasty, and I still feel good about him in my Dynasty leagues. But in redraft, like looking at that first round there, like, am I going to take Drake May or Austin Reed? Austin Reed. Am I going to take Drake May or Quinshon Judkins? Quinshon Judkins. Am I going to take Drake May or Bo Nix? I'm going to take Bo Nix. I'm going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. or Drake May. I'm going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. He's just never there for me. He kind of, in my opinion, Drake May should be going where Frank Harris and Michael Penix Jr. have started slipping to, and that is the second round there. Also, I am loving the start to this draft. That to me feels a lot better in terms of where his value should be. I'm willing to take the shot there after I've gotten a more secure guy in the first round. But do I think it's going to be Brennan Armstrong? No, I don't think it's going to be anything that gets absolutely nuked there. Like I said, I feel good about my Drake May shares in Dynasty. That is totally fine with me. Also, another point, Zach, you mentioned that Nick Mullins did well under Chip Lindsey at Southern Miss. You know who the head coach at Southern Miss was at that time?
Who was it? I can't think of it right now.
Todd Monken.
Okay.
So who was actually running the offense? Was it Chip Lindsey or Todd Monken? And that's something I noticed everywhere that Chip Lindsey went. If the offense went well, there was a head coach there that was actually running the show when it came to that. That's the big concern with me. So we'll see. Maybe Mac Brown brought Chip Lindsey in and said, hey, run the system that Phil Longo ran last year. Because it seems like Chip Lindsey is pretty decent at replicating other people's systems. So that's kind of the hope there. All right, Zach, it's coming up to your 5th round pick here. It's been a while since you got to talk about some of the guys you've been taking. Why don't you run through your 3rd, 4th, and now 5th round picks here, kind of talk about the way you've been building your team out here.
So Cowing, that to me, that just felt like great value there. He's one of my top receivers, the top 10 guys. So I've always kind of gone into these drafts. If I can get a top 10 receiver in round 3, I'm going to take him. And so that's kind of how I've drafted. The other guy there that I thought about was Golden, who went just a few picks after mine. So those two guys I think are great values in round 3. And then same thing for Martinez. I mean, he's a guy that I don't know how many running backs have gone off the board, but I think I have him as RB8. So again, just a no-brainer to me to take him there, to pair him with Shipley at the running back. So I feel pretty strong. I feel like I've had a strong start with the receivers and running backs for guys that I think are going to get the work that they need to have the value. I'm on the clock here, so I got to go one more here. I like this guy. His stock has kind of risen as the year has, or as we've gotten closer to the season. I like this offense. I think they're going to be even better this year than they were last year. And I just think that the way that he kind of performed last year, ended the year, I think he's going to have a pretty strong season for Akron there. And I might be a little too high on that offense. I was going through my team projections and I can't remember exactly where they were, but that felt really high where I had them, which is probably skewing where my player projections are. So maybe I'm a little bit high on them, but I'm pretty excited about that offense this year.
Well, and tomorrow's CTN episode deals with wide receivers, and one of the things that my guest, I'll just say it, Eric Froton and I talked about was that Akron offense. We talked about them for a little bit. I didn't realize they had 2 wide receivers last year with over 100 targets. Like, they absolutely force-fed both Shockey Jacques-Louis and Alex Adams. Shockey Jacques-Louis obviously gone. You got Alex Adams there, probably gets a little bit of an uptick with his absence, but at the same time, probably a guy somebody will take a shot on later. Daniel George comes in as well. I think I agree with you 100%. If that offense gets going with Joe Moorhead running it and everything over there, Akron could be a very sneaky good offense this year for Maxion shots. I think that I definitely think it is something that people are kind of underrating right now because everybody just thinks, oh, it's Akron. They're going to win like 2 games and they're not going to be a very good offense. I'm like, well, then things are changing over there. Looks like they're on the up and up. So let's see. Any questions I can grab here from the chat? This one comes from Shane Whitehead. What is your pecking order for the Tennessee wide receivers? So, Zach, we can make that one a real quick one as it comes back here. Again, your top 4 guys, Squirrel White, Ramel Keaton, Brew McCoy, and Dante Thornton. Those are kind of the 4 guys that people have been taking shots on. How do you put those guys in order?
I have Squirrel first. I've gone Brew. I probably have him second. I'll tell you, I have kind of stayed away from anything past there. I know Thornton could be up there. I think Keaton is probably my 4 there, but I think there could be some value in all 4 of those guys, especially in a best ball. I think especially where they're going, none of those guys outside of Squirrel are going very high.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can grab any of those 3, I don't have a great pulse on what that's going to look like for this year, what that pecking order is going to be. But taking any of those 3 guys where you can get them later in these drafts, like I know I've gotten Keaton a couple times at the end of some of these drafts, and I love it because I'm like, that's a guy that the value is so low in the draft, but he could have a couple weeks that are going to be good, and maybe he's turns into, one of their top receivers. So, but I think it's kind of, I guess I go back and forth between Thornton and Brew as that wide receiver too. But like I said, I think all 3 of those guys, it's great value you can get in these drafts.
I agree with you 100%. Again, I actually talk about tomorrow on the episode that I do think Squirrel's going a little bit too highly in some of these drafts, considering that, Jalen Hyatt was awesome last year, but a lot of that came from the fact that Tennessee lost Cedric Tillman early on in that year, and they needed somebody else to step up, because especially another explosive option, because Brew McCoy is a lot of things, he is not explosive. And Ramel Keaton's a lot of things, but he's not like a game-breaking wide receiver. He's decent. He's good, but I don't think he is like a guy like Jalen Hyatt. If you talk about pecking order for me, in the order I would draft them, why is the draft halted? What happened here? Resume draft. Anyway, in terms of pecking order and everything like that, in terms of the guys I would draft, Squirrel White would be my number 1 still. But I'm going to take more shots on Dante Thornton moving forward. Again, I've heard a lot of good things coming out of the Tennessee camps and everything. He's another guy with a speed skill set that I think absolutely that offense could take advantage of. Could be a ton of fun there. Brew, if you want a guy that is going to be peppered 15 yards down the field, get a decent target share, I think he's good. And then Ramel Keaton, fun upside, best ball play later on. He's going to have some good games throughout the year. But in terms of a guy I want to rely on week to week, I will think not. Alrighty. I think I'm going to continue to load up on running backs here. And I am going to... which way do I want to go here? There's 3 decent running backs on the board here. You know what? I'm going to take a guy who's kind of fallen in this draft a little bit compared to where he has been going. I'll go ahead and take KJ Jefferson. And maybe Luke will help me out with sorting out my running backs here.
I like the KJ Jefferson pick because I think he's very consistent in the scoring. And he's kind of on that higher end of scoring too. So he's a guy that I feel like if you kind of wait on quarterback in these drafts, that's a pretty good value. If you can, oh man, that's a good pick. I had LaQuinn Allen queued up. Yeah,
sixth round KJ Jefferson I like a whole lot better. He's been a guy that I've seen go off up where Riley Leonard's gone in the 3rd round there, 4th round there. To me, it makes no sense for him to be up there compared to some of the other guys that finished in a similar range as him last year, going 3, 4, 5 rounds after him in that if he's going up that high. Now, I will take the value here of him falling here in the 6th round. I don't see him a lot down here, so I'll go ahead and grab a share with that. Let's go ahead and answer another question in the chat. Let's bring this to Brett White. He noted that LaDainian Webb fell to the end of the 4th round. Did he fall in this draft? Yes, I would say he definitely fell in this draft. Typically a guy you see go off at the end of the second, beginning of the third round. But I've seen, it's not unheard of for me doing a ton of these drafts like this, for me to see him fall into the fourth round. The community's a little bit split on him. I'm definitely lower on him than a lot of people. He finished really well last year, but I didn't realize just quite how much of his production came in just a few amazing games in the middle of the season. And otherwise, he was consistent, but he wasn't like, a world breaker or anything like that. So I'm kind of okay seeing him fall to the fourth round there. What about you, Zach? You got any thoughts on LaDainian Webb?
LaDainian Webb, yeah, he's I think that's pretty solid value where he went in this draft. I think he's going to be one of those guys where he's probably a little bit more reliable, not reliable, but a better pick in a best ball, just because I think there is going to be that potential to have some of those bigger weeks. I think this year I get the feeling he might be a little bit maddening in a redraft league where this guy, do you not want to start him? So I still think he's going to have value. He's going to have some good weeks. But yeah, it's, I like that value where he got taken in this draft. So this guy,
by the way, love your Plumlee pick in the sixth round.
Yeah, especially like Plumlee in a best ball. I'm like,
Beautiful.
He's a top 5, right? Or right up there. He's got to be close to that just because some of those weeks. But then I think if you're taking Plumlee, you got to have a pretty good plan. If he's your QB1, you got to have a pretty good plan later on. Luckily, we have the quarterback room this year is pretty deep, I think. So there's still going to be some guys I can pair him with.
All right, let's see. You got Tyron Smith there in the 7th round. I like that right there, him going back to UTEP. Let's see if we can answer another question here in the chat. Let's go back up to the beginning where Ben asked about the wide receiver 1 at Colorado and do we think they're fantasy relevant? Given the system, you would think that one wide receiver at Colorado is going to be fantasy relevant. I mean, it is Sean Lewis's system heading over there. It's Pac-12. Defense is optional over there. In terms of who it is, like, I kind of took the shot on Weaver a couple times early on in the season, but like the buzz just hasn't been there for him. Jimmy Horn is kind of the one that provides some buzz there, but I'll be real, y'all. I'd probably take more than anybody. I know his snaps are going to be limited because he's going to be playing both wide receiver and cornerback, but like Travis Hunter's part of the cool kids club over there. And Deion Sanders runs his teams like a marketing campaign, and he knows the big names that are on his team, and he wants to make sure that those guys' names are big, shining lights whenever they get a touchdown. So Travis Hunter, I think, is definitely going to outperform several guys that you might be thinking of for Colorado. He's kind of the guy I might take the shot on, but it's like late. If you want a guy that's probably going to play a more traditional receiver role, I'd take the shot on Jimmy Horn, but I'm not super excited about it. Zach, you got thoughts there?
I don't have a great pulse on that. I'm pretty skeptical. I think that offense is probably going to have to score some points this year, and I think there will be some value. I just don't know. Like, there's just so many unknowns with that team, and they brought in so many transfer. Like, yeah, I just feel like it would be really hard to get any sort of a read from spring just based on, it's almost like this team is going to be, they're going to have a completely new team this fall when they head to camp, just with how many new guys. So it's been really hard for me to get a read on that team. I haven't actually taken really anybody from Colorado just because I don't feel super confident on what that's going to look like. I do think there is going to be value though there, because I think they're going to be, like I said, that I think that defense is just going to be.
You're on the clock, by the way. I don't know if you saw. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
just making sure.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that defense is going to be pretty bad, and I think the offense is going to score some. So, but yeah, I don't have a great pulse on that offense and where those receivers are going to stack up.
Here's a bit more of a philosophical. I almost messed up that word greatly. Philosophical question here from Austin. How much should offensive coordinator be credited with offensive success? For example, how much UT losing goalless to USF versus Housel being Heupel's right-hand man for close to 15 years. Or another example, Garrett Riley from TCU to Clemson. To me, it's really a case-by-case basis. Like, we were discussing Chip Lindsey earlier and everything like that. Like, if you were to credit Chip Lindsey with the offensive success at Southern Miss, you probably end up being wrong because, again, like, that offense was good before and after Chip Lindsey was there because Todd Monken was still running the show. It wasn't Chip Lindsey doing everything there versus Garrett Riley. If Clemson improves offensively this year, you have to credit Garrett Riley going over there and improving them, considering that they took a huge step back compared to where they were just a couple years ago. And if he gets them back, all the credit in the world to him. I feel like that's kind of the only way to look at it. But Zach, do you have a different thought line?
No, I mean, you're right. Yeah, it's a case by case for me, and really trying to figure out how much of an influence they've had on that offense, in that system. I think one thing I do like to consider when I'm going through a lot of my projections is maybe the OC didn't have a big influence on the system, but did the system influence him, and how has he looked since that season? Has it changed a little bit, kind of his tendencies? So I'll try and take some of that into consideration when I'm doing some of my projections. But yeah, it's definitely a case by case basis, which makes it even more challenging, I think, to do a lot of this because of how much turnover there is, not only with players, but also OCs, systems, all of that. So there's just so much. Curtis Rourke was a great pick there.
Thank you.
Especially if he's, when he comes back, I think he's got potential, especially in best ball, to have some really, really big weeks. That's a really good pick.
Yeah, no, I haven't talked about my build since KJ Jefferson here. Again, I've been still trying to hit running back hard. Luke didn't take any of the running backs that I was considering there, but what kind of broke the dam, because I was thinking between Allen, Raymond Davis, and I forget who the other one was. But basically what broke the dam for me in terms of who I took was that Allen's probably going to have some higher PPR value, considering that this is half point PPR. They showed last year in the bowl game that they're going to heavily target him in the passing game. I'm all about that. Took Curtis Rourke here. Again, I'm kind of taking a lot of QBs here that I haven't taken a lot of shares of this offseason, which I'm kind of liking, because Rourke usually comes off a little earlier than this, and I'm more and more confident that he will be okay to go for the season. Again, I was skeptical on it throughout most of the offseason, but I just can't ignore the fact that I've been hearing over and over again, he looks ready to go, and the staff fully expects him to be ready by week 1. If they're wrong, they're wrong. But even still, like, this is also something I've come around on. I'm not drafting Curtis Rourke for those first couple of weeks. Now, granted, Ohio does not have a hard schedule through those first couple of weeks, but I really want him from action. If he takes a couple extra weeks to get out into the field and then he comes out from action, I'm totally okay with that. Love that here as my second quarterback off the board. And then I took Caleb Johnson, continuing to load up on running back in these middle rounds here. Iowa, they're not a great offense at all, but they are good for two things, tight ends and running backs typically. So I'm feeling pretty good about Caleb Johnson, who got almost 900 yards as a true freshman for them. I'm totally down with that. So, Zach, you're back on the clock here. Let me check the chat for some questions here. Let's see. Austin asks, how high are you reaching/drafting Tyler Shuck compared to other QBs? What would you need to see during fall camp for him to rise to top 5 potential? I'm okay with people who are willing to reach up and grab Tyler Shuck. I haven't done a ton of it this offseason, although I probably need to at least grab a couple shares. It's more of the fact that, like, what do I need to see him do during fall camp for him to rise to top 5 potential? There's nothing he can do, because my biggest concern is injury and the fact that he can't stay healthy. So if he gets a clean bill of health coming out of fall camp, yeah, I'm going to be a bit more excited to draft him, but, like, I've kind of baked in the risk already with how much I'm kind of letting him fall. And if he's still there to me in, like, the 5th, 6th round, heck yeah, I'll take the shot on him. Again, he fell to the 6th round in this draft. If he was still there by the time it got back to my pick at the 6-11, I would have taken Tyler Shuck there, 100%. What about you, Zach? How do you kind of go about dealing with Shuck?
Yeah, I don't think he's gone a little bit high for my liking. But I think you're drafting him definitely on the potential in that system. And again, it just goes back to, is he going to be able to stay healthy all year? And if he does, I think you're getting great value where he's going, like in the 6th round this draft. That's, that's pretty good. Um, Pretty good spot. But like I said, I haven't taken him too. I don't think I even have one share of him just because of where he's going. It's just a little bit high for me, but I definitely understand it because I just think there's so much value in that system, and if he stays healthy, he's probably a top 5 QB.
Oh, 100%. And again, like the thing that really excited a lot of us is during the bowl game, they ran him 25 times. He got over 100 yards rushing in that game. Like if you give me a Zach Kittley quarterback and they let him run, holy crap, that might be an absolute game breaker for CFF this year. It's just, can he stay healthy? It's just the ultimate question right there. A couple other questions here. Let's see what we got here. Brett asks, how much do you think Oregon changing offensive coordinators affects Bo Nix's value? Zach, I'll throw it over to you here first. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think the system that they're bringing in with Stein is not going to hurt him at all. I was kind of looking at how players have done in first-year systems with some of these OCs, and that is one where there isn't a drop-off. So I think Nix is going to be fine. I still have him QB3, so I don't think there's going to be. I mean, there might be just a little drop off there, but I still think he's a top QB. I'm excited to have that system up in Oregon. I'm more excited probably for Franklin. I think I really liked Franklin last year, and I think he's going to benefit greatly. And we're going to probably get another receiver in that room that's going to have some value. I know a lot of guys don't really like Bucky
You're on the
too
clock,
much.
by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. I couldn't tell if you were like looking at the computer screen trying to pick somebody or if you were just completely distracted. Totally fine.
I know a lot of people probably aren't super high on Bucky Irving, but I think there's going to be some value there, especially in a best ball. I like him there probably more than in a redraft, but there's probably a little bit of value. But I think that offense is, I'm excited for it to be in Oregon. That's one of the things you always get worried about when you find a good system and then that OC leaves for somewhere else, and you just hope that, man, I hope they bring in somebody else that can kind of continue this. And I think Oregon did that with this hire. So he's done really well with his first year. So I don't think there's going to be too much. I guess the one concern could be different level of competition, going up to a Power 5. That could be a concern, but I think they got the dudes to do it. So not super concerned with that.
I thought about backtracking on my pick there. Then I realized that the way I have this set up, it absolutely broadcasts to everybody who I was about to pick. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and pick this, and then we'll figure it out from there. I agree with you 100%, by the way, about Oregon's situation over there. In fact, I think it might be better because, again, we saw with Kenny Dillingham, he spreads the ball around a ton, which kind of inhibited Troy Franklin from really, truly becoming that top-tier CFF wide receiver we needed him to. Last year, he looked really good down the stretch, but even still, he finishes the wide receiver 38. I'm back on the clock here. Go ahead and grab this dude. So it kept him from being the top. Obviously, Will Stein funnels it to like 2 to 3 different guys there at UTSA. I'm hoping to see that at Oregon as well. Couple of fun options there. They bring in through the transfer portal. I mean, Tej Johnson is Bo Nix's adopted brother, so you could go for the nepotism angle there. You could be going for a guy like Trayshawn Holden. Did it well at Alabama. Maybe he can do it again at Oregon. Maybe you shoot for, in the very last round, you shoot for a guy like Jurian Dickey, 5-star true freshman coming in there. Like, why not? If nobody's taking him here in any of these drafts. So, like, if you got a super deep league, why not? Why not take the shot there and hope he breaks out pretty early?
Where is he going in like Dynasty? Have you been in any
Yes.
Dynasty?
I can look up some of our drafts. Again, off the top of my head, I've seen him go as early as the late first, but I've also seen him go as late, or I've seen him go as early as the late first. I've also seen him go as late as like the 4th round. It really depends on like kind of what kind of supplemental players you have in your draft. So like I had one league where we had a ton of great supplemental options, and so a lot of these top tier freshmen made it down the board a little bit versus the Blue Bloods league that I'm in with some of the other guys in the oh my goodness, I almost glitched out there for a second. Other guys in the industry, most of the supplemental guys were already off the board, so like that was one where he went off pretty darn early there. Let's see, you're back on the clock here, Zach. I'll look for some questions here. Both Shane and Austin asked about the Hawaii offense here. Zach, wide receiver 1 out of Hawaii, who is it?
Hey, you tell me. That's like I talked about. I don't have a great pulse on like Colorado. I don't know. I don't even know what to do with Hawaii. Part of me I want to be excited about that offense and what they can do, what the potential is there. But then there's also a part of me that's like, are they actually going to be that this year? I don't even know if they'll have a ton of value. When I was doing my team projections, they were towards the bottom. So that kind of just, I'm like, man, I don't think I have, I don't know if I've taken anybody. I've taken Shager a couple times, just late rounds. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's off a couple weeks and that's great for best ball. But outside of that, I have no clue on receiver. So I'm no help there.
Yeah, no, I really haven't gone out of my way to grab Hawaii guys either. I know it's one of those things where it's frustrating me because like I know there's going to be value there. They should be fully running that run and shoot offense this year. And I know that like if that is the case, those wide receivers are going to have value. I just have no clue which one to take the shot on. I pick one here and there sometimes, but most of the time there's usually somebody else that likes them just a little bit more than me. And that's who they go with. I know some people are big on Shuki Hines Hines there at Hawaii. He's playing in the slot, which is traditionally where the value comes in that offense. We don't even know if that's actually who starts in the slot. We'll find out. Again, like Jonah Pinoke is another option. Jalen Walhall. Tamatoa Makiawa Timalala is another option there. Like, I couldn't tell you guys. I'll be real. That's what I'm going to have to keep my ear down to the ground when it comes to the fall. Ken asks Zach, who would you pick between Ohio State or Washington as more likely to produce 2 top 15 wide receivers this year?
Oh, man. I feel more – so that's a good question. I think I might lean towards Washington only because I trust Michael Penix a little bit more than Kyle McCord to feed two receivers. And also you're talking about Henderson and Mayan Williams are going to eat in that offense. So if I had to pick one, I'd probably go Washington just because I think it's more centered around the 2 receivers there, where Ohio State's they got a couple more mouths to feed. But I actually wouldn't be surprised if both teams have 2 guys in the top 15. So I mean, that's kind of where
obviously that's where the entire industry's at, because that's why we see Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, and Rome Odunze all go off in the first 2 rounds. Like, we clearly think that both of these offenses are capable of producing 2 top-tier guys. But I actually kind of agree with you that Washington is probably the more likely of the 2, because Washington has plans this year. They plan on making a splash this year, trying to ride on the momentum. That's why they were able to get all of their guys to come back for one last year. And they need, and I repeat, need Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan if they're going to continue to make that splash versus Ohio State. We saw last year, Jackson Smith-Njigba might have been the best wide receiver in America last year, but we never got to see them because they shut things down so hard with him just because he got injured at the beginning of the year. Now, he got injured again later on in the year when they tried to bring him back, so I guess they were somewhat justified in keeping him out for so long. But at the same time, like, Travion Henderson got nicked up and he was kept out of multiple games. You saw it all the time with Ohio State last year. They know they have depth. They're not afraid to hold guys out. It's the same thing with Georgia as well. So We will definitely see. But again, I agree with you. Definitely Washington there. Brett says Lockhart dropping to the 11th round. Interesting. I heavily considered grabbing Justin Lockhart in the last round. I just have a lot of shares of him, and if he made it back to me in the 12th round, I would have taken him. But I was curious just to see how far he would go down because I love Justin Lockhart this year. All right, but I am able to get some value wide receiver here. Give me Devin Voisin, wide receiver out of South Alabama.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I think my only concern with Voisin is he going to be the guy? But that wide receiver 1 in that system, I mean, every year it just produces. So really like that value right there.
Well, they gave him the number 5 jersey, which I need to look it up again. But like, there's something special surrounding the number 5 jersey, and it's like a huge honor to be given that particular jersey. So that tells me that they are very, very interested in making sure that he gets featured this year.
That's a good sign. Yeah, that's one system I've always tried to grab that wide receiver 1 if I could. And also in I don't think, if you can get their wide receiver 2 late, I think they usually pop off for you get 3 or 4 pretty good weeks there. So kind of something I'll look for towards the end of the draft. This year I'm not sure who transferred in to South Alabama.
Javon Ivory.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sold on him.
No.
On Lacey maybe could give you a couple weeks. So I'm not super high on that wide receiver 2 this year, but that is one where I do kind of see what they got for later.
Lacey's just not super explosive. Like, I've noticed that his yards per catch are just not anything that to write home about. So I think that kind of limits his upside. They have a role for him in that offense. He's just never really going to be that guy for them, as far as I can tell.
I want to say,
go ahead.
2 years ago, it looked like he had the potential to maybe be that guy, and then last year it was just like, no, he's not that guy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've also drafted Luke Lachey for, I think, the 7,000th time this offseason. If I don't get Brock Bowers or Aronde Gadsden in the second round, I just go for the Iowa tight end later on in the draft. And there's a possibility I might shoot for Mr. Why am I blanking on his name? Eric All at some point in this draft, just to grab both of them. I've done it in multiple drafts. I feel pretty good about it.
I think I've maybe done that once and I loved it. I could get both of those guys. All right.
Dang. Hoping you follow just a little bit further. All right. Back to the drawing board of QB. You're going to load up my queue. There's some decent options there. TJ Hart in the 13th seems solid. I agree with you, Brett. Let's see other questions here. Austin Smith asks, while talking about QBs with newer OCs, what should we expect from Spencer Rattler? Is he a top 24 to 36 QB? Heck no. I am not on board with that one at all. I'm rooting for Spencer Rattler because I do think he is turning it around a little bit. But that offensive coordinator hire for South Carolina, bringing in the tight ends coach over from Arkansas if you look up uninspiring in the dictionary, there is a picture of that offensive coordinator sitting right next to that word. I am not on board with that hire whatsoever. It's nothing that's getting me excited for Spencer Rattler. I honestly think South Carolina is going to perform worse this year than people are going to expect over there. But maybe that's just me being a dog fan over here. Zach, do you have any thoughts on Spencer Rattler?
I'm not high on him. The OC hire was it was odd to me, I guess. I know he's got a lot of background in the NFL, and I think we've seen where that NFL OC coming into college, there's just not a ton of value usually in those systems in the college when they kind of run that. So that's kind of how I've approached that. How that situation is going to go. So I'm not super high on Spencer at all this year.
All right, throwing another question at you here, Zach. Another one from Austin. Which one of these two? I believe they're both off the board, so it's okay for us to talk about them. Davis Brin or Darren Granger? They both seem like middle grade QBs, but who has the higher upside of the two?
Yeah, I think Brin has the higher upside, just because that there's going to be volume. I like Granger though because he's going to be using that run game. Those guys are neck and neck in my rankings. So I think I actually have Bryn one spot higher than Granger, maybe a couple spots, but I would probably lean Bryn. But I really like both of those guys going into this year.
I have Granger as my QB 22 and Bryn as my QB 26, which might seem odd because I took Bryn. Again, I'm trying to diversify some of the guys I've been taking some of these drafts, make sure I'm not talking about the same guys every week. But Granger, just by definition of being a dual threat guy, is the reason why I give him the edge in terms of upside. Like, just guys who use their legs are going to have higher upside. Now, Bryn is one of the guys that absolutely can have the passing volume you need in order to be still CFF relevant without your legs. So that's why I still have him very highly. But of those two, I'm gonna take Granger every single time there.
Also made me think too, like Bryn's new in that system, so there could be a little bit of a learning curve there where Granger, he's in that system, right? So
yeah,
gonna take off and run with that. So maybe it is give the slight edge to Granger. I might have to reshuffle that, but yeah, they're really close in my rankings.
Bryn did look good in the spring game. All right, we're at a little bit of a lull in the chat here, so go ahead and if you haven't already, go ahead, drop any questions there. Again, we are almost halfway through the draft, so we got plenty of time left. If you think of anything, see any picks that strike you as weird or you're surprised by, go ahead and drop it in the chat. We're willing to talk about some of those guys. And then some of you still have not liked our video, so if you are out there and you have not hit that little thumbs up button, would really appreciate if you could do that. And also, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, maybe you're new here tonight and everything, go ahead and subscribe, like the button, and share it with your college football buddies. Again, we are very welcoming here. We're a college fantasy football podcast, show, channel, but we love just talking college football in general. So if you got team-related questions, guys that you want to hear about, we're all going to talk about it. Let's see. Zach, you just took Barry and Brown. It seems like you have planted your flag in that Kentucky wide receiver room there. What do you like about Barry and Brown?
That was gonna come up. I don't know if I have. I think there's gonna be some value in that system for sure. I know it usually it came like last time he was there as Wan'Dale Robinson, right? So running in the slot. So I've been taking Brown just because he's been going. It seems like he's been going earlier in the drafts. But I'm a little unsettled. I just want to get a piece of that. I guess I'm okay with getting a piece of that in round 14 here.
No, absolutely. So I think I brought this up on almost every podcast I have when these guys get brought up. But like Barry and Brown versus Tavian Robinson kind of plays in the slot where Liam Cohen traditionally targets and everything like that. Does that worry you, or do you think he'll change it up to target clearly, in my opinion, the most talented guy in that room?
And I think that's the dilemma here, right? Barry Brown's probably more talented, but he does target that slot. So I think when I take Barry Brown, and this is giving away my strategy here, I'm going to try and take Tavian Robinson in a little bit too, right? Get both of those so I can have it.
Yeah, just letting you know he's no longer going to be there for you. These guys who are listening, they will take advantage of us every single time, Zach.
No, I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Tavian Robinson, is featured a little bit more because that's what he's done. But again, like this, it's tough, and I think both are going to be. I think both will do all right in that offense. So, and this, we're getting down to your wide receiver 5, 6. I was hoping that this guy's going to give you a couple weeks at this point. That'll help your team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thought about taking a guy, but I don't need to take another wide receiver with the bye week 7. So we'll see what all I can find here. Screw it. We'll go ahead and grab a quarterback. I'm willing to see what falls to me in the next round. Do I continue to load up on running back? Yeah, no. Dang it. There's a lot of options I like but don't love here. Screw, this is pretty low. High floor guy. We'll go ahead and take Will Howard here. Probably a little bit earlier than he's been going in a lot of drafts, but felt like I need to take a fourth quarterback.
I think I like that pick. I think he looked good last year when he played, but I wouldn't be surprised if they use his legs a little bit this year too. So I think some upside in the run game with him. So getting him in round 14, I think that's pretty solid.
Let's see, what do I go with here now? Maybe take another tight end? Definitely need to lay off on QB for a little bit. You know what? We were talking about the Hawaii offense earlier. I think I'm going to go ahead and take another piece there.
Yeah.
I mean, Tylen Hines, explosive guy. Chris Moxley and I talked about when we were doing the running back show not the running back show, when we were doing the underrated offense show, we keep talking about Chucky Hines, Jalen Walhall, Jonah Pinoque, which one of those receivers is going to lead Hawaii in receptions? Why not Tylen Hines? Might be the most explosive dude on their roster. Kind of fits that Calvin Turner-esque role of being like a hybrid running back, wide receiver kind of guy. Put him in the slot. See what happens. That could be a ton of fun. And that would be absolutely gold if I could get that here in the 15th round.
Yeah. And that's a name I didn't even mention when we were talking about Hawaii. He's probably the one guy I'm the highest on in that offense. So totally kind of spaced off him. But yeah, that's a good pick there.
Let's see. Again, other questions here. John Lobb, welcome to the chat, sir. All right, let's see. Brett asks us, is it me or is the Mountain West Conference down some in terms of college fantasy football prospects this year? So, Brett, it's funny you mentioned that because recently I have been doing the conference-only best balls that I do every year, and we just did the Mountain West draft, and that was the one. Normally there's one every year where you get towards the last 5 rounds of it and people are just slogging through. Everybody's complaining about how there's no value left on the board. This year it was the Mountain West. It was the one that kind of took everybody by surprise of how quickly things fell off throughout that draft. So in a way, Brett, yes, I would say it is down, but I think there is some value to be found. There's going to be value found there every year. I think it's just less obvious guys this year. Zach, you just took Daniel George. You got both the Akron wide receivers. You got 2 guys that probably have 100 targets this year. I think you're pretty happy with that. What do you think?
Yeah. And that might be, I'm trying to remember where he's gone in the past, and this is maybe a little bit early, but I really like having both of those guys in that offense because you're gonna get. I feel like almost every week you're gonna at least have somebody that's gonna have some good value there. So,
all right, Zach, I'll throw the next question at you. This comes to us from the redshirt sophomore. He says, "What conferences have the worst set of defenses so he can just go and take shots on offensive guys in those conferences?"
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's got to be CUSA, right? I mean, that feels like, and if you guys subscribe, you'll see on the matchup report, those are some of those defenses that are always right at the top, right? Some of the best matchups they're always up there towards the top. Those are always some of the guys that, even if they're not, haven't been great for the season, you might count on them to be a sleeper for the week and maybe help you win when you're looking at DFS or something. So it's CUSA is always where I go for who are those teams playing, and I like those matchups.
Yeah, going back to those conference-only best balls and everything, we did the CUSA draft, and I was kind of looking at it. And to me, the thing that stood out to me is how quickly things fell off in terms of just known quantities there. Granted, it's already a conference that has only 9 teams, but I see some of the guys going off later, and I'm just there is so much value in this conference because of how terrible these defenses are. People that we are not drafting at all are going to come from this conference and are going to be top 30, top 20 guys at their position. It's just that we know so little about these teams that it's impossible for us to know who's going to come out of there. In terms of other conferences, I would throw out there one Pac-12. Again, Pac-12 just straight up. Tom, really? With the Sam Brown pick? Really, man? You're going to do this to me again 2 weeks in a row? Anyway, Pac-12 we saw last year. There's just no defense out there. It is Pac-12 after dark, except they do it at all times of day now. And I would definitely just take shots on Pac-12 guys. And then the other one is the AAC. Again, they lose some of their best defenses to the Big 12 in Cincinnati, UCF, Houston. Well, I mean, Houston's wasn't great anyway, but like they lose two of their best defenses there. They bring in teams like North Texas, UTSA, teams that just are not good at defense overall. Just as a conference, they're going to take a step back this year, and I think that's where you can definitely find some value there. Love that you're just stacking up on Akron guys here, Zach. That is the ultimate college fantasy move if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever been able to do it in a draft, and I just really like I said, I love that offense. I love the potential of that offense. And I needed a QB. I've kind of avoided that a little bit. I only had 3, and he was the best guy on my board, so it just worked out really well for me.
So I'll ask you, because you're clear. I keep forgetting about Trayvon Rudolph. I moved him up my rankings. I need to add him to my Fantrax ratings. That's a really good pick by Justin right there. Anyway, Zach, you're clearly big on DJ Irons. You're clearly big on the receivers and everything. But Joe Moorhead has typically had a number 1 running back that he feeds.
Yeah.
Who's the guy you're willing to take a shot on there at Akron?
Guy that I've had on my list, Lorenzo Lingard, so he transferred in. He's the RB1. If he's a guy I'm taking, or if I'm taking the running back, that's who I'm targeting this year for sure. And actually, I was pretty excited last year but they just had some injuries, it seemed like, or their running backs, it just kind of they had a couple last year. But it looked promising early on, and it kind of faded out. They just didn't get settled to that position. But I'm hoping that if he can have that true RB1 in that system, and that actually could take away from these receivers, and maybe I'm too high if they have a great running back. But it's Lorenzo Lingard is the guy that I'd be targeting at the running back spot there this year.
Yeah, I like Clyde Price, but again, like you said, there's just been some injury concerns there and everything. They clearly brought in a guy like Lorenzo Lingard, who had a pretty good recruiting pedigree there. If I had to take a shot, I'd probably take him, and that's like super, super late in draft. So maybe at the end of the 30th round here, if he's still on the board, I might take the shot there. We talked about the Mountain West. I've taken 3 Mountain West guys in a row, I just realized. I grabbed Malik Sherrod there. Love him here in the 16th round. This might be the most heavy RB I've gone to up until this point in any draft that I have done this year. And I'm actually feeling really, really good about it. Like grabbing some elite wide receivers, banking on those guys, and then just loading up on running backs and quarterbacks as they fall to me throughout the draft. Feeling very good about it. Also grabbed Ricky White there out of UNLV. I talk about it tomorrow on the CTN episode. I feel really good about where UNLV's offense is heading. That should be a ton of fun right there. Zach, you're on the clock here. What you looking at, man?
Man, I really need to get a running back, I feel like. And I like this guy in best ball. I would not take him in redraft. And this might be a little high, but he just gives you points for, I don't know, 4 to 5 weeks. It's like he could be a guy that falls in that flex spot. I think the offense is continues to just be better and better every year. He's not going to get a ton of points over the season, but he's a guy that I think is going to get you a couple weeks. So,
dude, he is a great floor play. He is a guy that gets you 10, 12 points every single week, no matter what. He's going to get 60 yards and a touchdown, and you're feeling good about that in a best ball form like that. Like, you don't want to have weeks where the bottom completely falls out of your running back room on a week because you took all upside guys like a boom or bust every single week. He provides you a very safe floor every week. I like the pick right there. I will say to people, a name that I haven't drafted a ton of, but is something to keep an eye on. Quali Conley is a transfer running back that came into San Jose State. They seem to like him quite a bit over there. I would not be surprised if he is somebody that gets a pretty decent role this year, especially to take a little bit off of Shavon Cordero and his running game just a little bit. But let's see anybody else in the chat here. Austin Smith, who has the higher fantasy and team upside at Ole Miss if there's an announced starter? Jackson Dart or Spencer Sanders? And where would you rank them if there was an announced starter? What do you think, Zach?
Man, that's a good question. I think, I think Spencer Sanders probably gets hurt, right, if he starts.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like does he last the whole season? I like Spencer Sanders because he can run a little bit. I just don't. The thing about that offense and with Kiffin, he's one of those play callers where the tendencies when you're looking at it year over year change because he really uses his best player. And I think Judkins is the guy he wants to lean on, no matter who's starting at that quarterback spot. So honestly, no matter who gets named, I don't know if I'm looking too heavily at either one of those guys. I would say probably that's a tough question. I would probably lean Jackson Dart.
Yeah, so Jackson Dart, obviously, a lot of his production came in some garbage time last year. You definitely don't like to see that. But people forget he had 128 carries last year, ran for almost 600 yards. The big problem with him is that he only scored one touchdown on the ground. I don't know about you, Zach, but that screams like some positive touchdown regression candidacy if I've ever seen one. You don't typically run for 600 yards and only manage to pick up one touchdown. This next upcoming year, if Dart's the starter, I do think that he is going to be more valuable than we are kind of giving him credit for right now. He just went off in the 16th round there. It's Lane Kiffin's offense. He last year in an atrocious showing, he still almost put up 3,000 yards, 600 yards on the ground. It's just that he was missing the touchdowns that you need really for a true CFF quarterback. I think he fixes that this year if he earns that job back. I think it'll be interesting to see how it happens. Let's see. It's coming up on me here. I was kind of hoping Brandon Rice would make it back to me here, but he is off the board. So I think what I'm going to do, if Zach doesn't snipe me here, is just take a shot on system once again. We will definitely see. Zach is taking his time to make that pick. Let's see. Any questions in the chat we could take a look at here? Brett says the Dante Moore pick from UCLA seems like a good pick in the 18th round. Zach, how do you feel about UCLA's quarterback room? Are you taking shots there?
I like Dante Moore out of any of them later in the draft. It just feels like if he doesn't win the job outright, Ahmad Anderson was still out there. Man, that's a good pick. If he doesn't win the job outright at the beginning of the year, I feel like he's eventually going to take that role over. He's not a guy like if he wins that starting job, that quarterback spot in that system is so valuable, and so I really I like it. But later in the draft, yeah, I don't know if there's early on. I think the very first draft I took Schlee and it might have been Dante Moore. That was like the February draft. I haven't touched it since. So I've kind of stayed away, but I can definitely see taking more later in the draft with the upside that you could get from him there.
All right. Let's see. I just took Bryson Nesbitt. I realized I hadn't taken a tight end in a while, and I looked to see what kind of value was still sitting there. And Bryson Nesbitt, tight end wide receiver hybrid at UNC. They're going to be spreading the ball around a ton. Could be a guy that benefits from, that ball being spread around just a little bit more. He could get more volume than he was getting last year. So I'll take that as my second tight end here in the 18th round. All right, let's see. I just got a question here from Austin Smith. What QB outside the top 24 has the best chance to insert themselves into the top 24 as a weekly starter? is it cheating if I just go like the guy I have at QB 25? Like that I feel like that answers the question of like, obviously if I have him ranked 25, like that to me is like the next best guy. Like Jaden Delores, who I have at QB 25, he was a top 20 QB last year. So like I feel pretty good about his chances of making it to the top 24 as a weekly starter. Davis Brin, shoot, Donovan Smith at QB 27, he's somebody I got to probably move up here soon because Dana Holgerson basically all but confirmed that he's going to be the starter. Clayton Tune was QB2 last year. Like, he's probably the guy that has the best chance maybe to finish QB1 outside the top 24. Maybe. I don't know. I have to look even further than that. But you have thoughts, Zach?
Yeah. Just looking. I if Donovan Smith is outside of your top 24, I would say he's a strong candidate for that just because that system. I was looking at it earlier this week, and it's just unreal what that QB1 has done in that system consistently over like the last 9 years. So I feel like you always that's one of those guys. I have a guy. So Chandler Morris is a guy I know. It's so weird. He won the job last year. He did not look good at all at the start of the year, but I feel like he's a guy that I'm a little bit lower on, not low on, but I think he's outside of that top 24. That he's a guy that could easily jump up into kind of that top tier. Trying to look through my list of some of the other guys that maybe have a shot.
Just to confirm some questions from Brett in the chat. These are quick ones. Any word on the Iowa State gambling situation? No official punishments yet, but it looks pretty bleak for Deckers and Brock. And then Holderson did confirm at Big 12 Media Days that he didn't outright say it, but he pretty much outright said that like Donovan Smith is the guy they're hoping steps up to be QB1 there. So other questions here. Tommy says he stacked all of his quarterbacks with their wide receivers. Let me look at your team here, Tommy. Cade Klubnik. He stacked all of his wide receivers. Wait, hold on. What did he say? All my QBs with wide receivers. That's a lie, Tom. Oh wait, no, never mind. Antonio Williams is right there. I'm just blind. Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, Joe Milton, Dante Thornton, Carson Beck, Dominic Lovett, Dante Moore, J. Michael Servant. He is not wrong. He did stack every single one of his quarterbacks with one of their wide receivers. That is a strategy. Dang it, Emory Jones came off. I was hoping he'd fall a little bit more.
Who stacked? Who did that?
Dynasty Pros Tom.
Okay.
Every single one of his quarterbacks, he has one of their wide receivers. That's betting on system right there. That is 100% betting on system. Let's see. Who else? Oh my God. Y'all doing a good job taking off some value here in this draft. Let's see. Ooh, woof. Wide receiver value not falling to me here. Let's see. What else here? Again, bit of a lull in the chat, so don't be afraid to drop some questions there, y'all. We still got about a third of the draft to make it through here. Totally okay to answer pretty much any of your questions. You can ask what I had for dinner tonight, and let me tell you, it was absolutely delicious.
Hey, Jared, quick, what's position eligibility? Can they have? What are we doing here?
So I think it's set for primary position only, but we're just gonna stick it with that.
Perfect. No, that's fine. I just want to make before I make the pick.
Nope, totally get it. Jacob Altman says he now has 2 Texas Tech quarterbacks and 3 Texas Tech wide receivers. Once again, betting on system there. Dre McCray, Baron Morton, Miles Price, Tyler Shuck, and Jared Bradley all on the same team. Jacob, if those guys stay healthy this year, you might have won the league just now. That's all I'm saying. All right, Zach, you take Tanner McLaughlin there, tight end out of Arizona. That is your second tight end. What makes you so confident in Tanner McLaughlin this year?
I'm not super confident. I kind of neglected tight end. I wanted, Sinnott from Kansas State, but he's only running back eligibility right now. So that's who I really wanted. I think just in that system, obviously they're going to pass the ball a lot. he had some solid games last year. I'm not super high on him, but I think he's a guy for best ball. You're going to get a couple good weeks. I have a couple plays I like to do a little later on tight end that I feel more confident in. But I think McLaughlin, he goes a little bit earlier than these other guys, so I could have waited on them. But I wanted to make sure I had a decent tight end with a little bit of upside there.
Yeah, and people don't talk about with Dory or with Jacob Cowling moving to the outside, that over the middle target position kind of opens up for Arizona just a little bit there. I mean, Montana Lamonius Craig could take over that slot position. He could do well. Kevin Green's another guy that they've talked about a little bit, but why not Tanner McLaughlin there at tight end? Like, he's a big, huge target. Like, why not give that additional option over the middle right there? I think that could be a ton of fun. Let's see. He's about to come back to me here. Zach's got 3 seconds. Is he going to make a pick or is he going to time out? Oh, he takes Kevin Coleman. Well, I'm going to take a shot on system here. He's at a new school, so it probably doesn't work out well, but who cares? This is 20th round. Taking the shot on that wonderful Phil Longo system over there at Wisconsin. Now, give me Shimray DK, the wide receiver at Wisconsin there. You put up over 40 fantasy points in a single game when Graham Mertz is your quarterback and you're on Wisconsin, you're a pretty darn good player right there. So I'm going to take the shot on talent there and him being in a new system. And I'm going to take another tight end here. I'm going to take an upside guy here that I feel pretty confident about. Mr. Dallin Holker there at Colorado State. Love what Jay Norvell did with Cole Turner a couple of years ago. He specifically brought in Dallin Holker after Holker was upset with his usage at BYU. Seems like a match made in heaven. He says, come on over to Colorado State. We'll use you like the receiver that we should. I feel pretty good about that as my third tight end off the board here. Brett asks, anything else fantasy-wise we learned during Big 12, Pac-12, and SEC media days? Not really a ton, Brett. Again, I have to dig into it just a little bit more, but we were all kind of lamenting this a little bit, that with, with conference realignment, with the transfer portal, that's all the media guys really wanted to ask about, and that's really all the coaches are willing to talk about. Coaches don't really want to give away any information about who's starting where or anything like that at media days, at least not nowadays. They all want to play things close to the chest, so unfortunately, not really a ton there. Zach, did you see anything in your research regarding the media days and anything kind of stick out to you there?
No, I honestly haven't had much chance to look at much of that yet, so I don't have anything for you.
Sounds good. Well, Zach, it's about to come up to you here. What are you kind of looking at in your queue? You don't have to give names, obviously, but like position-wise, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so I definitely need to get a running back. I feel like running back and tight end, I feel like I neglected a little bit. I went too heavy on receiver. So this guy, man, this feels kind of risky. I feel like that where they're at as like it's very shaky, but I don't think there's really anybody else on that offense that is like he's gonna be their guy, I feel like. So if they can kind of pull it together here, I feel like the season's going to be a mess. So it's probably a risky pick. But if there's anybody in that offense that's going to have any sort of value, it's probably going to be him.
Zach, are you not the biggest believer in one Ben Bryant?
No, I'm not. No.
I totally agree with you. Like, you bring in an interim head coach there who's never coached a game, like head coached a game in his life or anything like that. He has one thing in his mind only, and that is just, let me get the ball into the hands of our best player, which is Cam Porter, and let's just see how far he takes us. And that could be a ton of fun for CFF. Now, Northwestern's also going to be bad this year, so I don't know what Porter's touchdown upside is going to be. He's also not the receiver that Evan Hall was, so I think there's a little bit of upside cap there as well. But 21st round, and he's your what? 1, 2, 3, 4... 5, 6 running back off the board here, Zach. I think that's a pretty good pick right there. Brett Pagny says in the chat, I keep going back and forth on the Utah running back room. Does Bernard cut into a bunch of Jackson's carries, or do we expect 17 to 20 opportunities per game for Jackson. I'm big on Jaquindon Jackson this year. I think he showed at the end of last year that he absolutely can be that workhorse running back for Utah that they need him to be. Now, Bernard's a veteran. He has the receiving ability that Jackson doesn't have, but he's been that the last couple of years, and that didn't really hurt Tavion Robinson a couple years ago. I think Jaquindon Jackson is just going to be just fine, especially as long as they give Jackson those oh-so-important goal line carries that make the Utah running back room what it is. Zach, do you have thoughts on the Utah running back room?
Completely agree. I'm all on board with Jackson this year. I got him in the top 10. I think he's gonna have a pretty good year. So I'm all on board with Jackson.
All righty. All right, we're going in here into we're in the last third of the draft here, Zach. The safe guys are off the board. It is all about going for risk. It is about shooting for upside here. What are some things that you kind of look at? Are there certain stats you look for? Is it just playing systems? Like, what do you look for in these later guys that makes them more valuable here in the latter part of your draft?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So I definitely look at systems. I know there's been a lot of talk about kind of like, I think Froton's big on like the wide receiver 3. I think this is a great spot to kind of go for that. I like to look at maybe some guys that are inconsistent but can put up some big weeks in a best ball, right? So are there some guys there? How did some guys finish that maybe didn't get a lot of hype, but they ended the season pretty strong? So I'll try and look at that. And really, a lot of times for me, I just start to take guys that I want to see do good. They might not.
Yeah, fair enough.
They do good. There might not be a ton of upside, but it's like, hey, I just want to see this guy do good. So it's kind of where I land. It's kind of usually a mixed bag for me when I get down here. It's between some guys that I think have some really good upside, but are a risky play, or it's just, hey, I just like this guy. I just want to see him do well.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair. Again, like, I typically go for system plays. I start looking for guys that, like, if kind of handcuff options where, like, if the guy ahead of them goes down, like, they are clearly the next guy up. Now, I still try, this is especially with wide receivers, because, like, I talked about Jalen Hyatt earlier, and, like, the reason why Jalen Hyatt did so well last year was because Tillman went down so early, and Hyatt eventually kind of used that opportunity to get the volume, the explosiveness that he needed later on in the year. I kind of look for guys in this range. I also still kind of look for guys that have kind of slipped through the cracks of, like, hey, it's a bit of a Javon Baker is actually a great example. It just came off the board here. It's a bit of a messy situation, but, like, there's wide receiver 1 potential for his team here. And if there's a guy here still on the board, I'm going to take another example when he comes to me at the 22-11 pick here. That's kind of what I look for. And then again, sticking with system, guys like in the Tennessee wide receiver room. Let's see. Is he still on the board? Let me see. He probably isn't because, yep, nope, he's gone. Oh, wait, no, that's only QBs. Because Tom has probably scooped him up somewhere, or somebody else has scooped him up. Oh, I'm on the board. Yeah. Colby Young, wide receiver out of Miami, a wide receiver 1 who has slipped through the cracks. I know we're all burned based on what Miami has been the past couple of years, but if they are able to get things going again over there, I love the potential of Colby Young. JUCO transfer last year, looked really good at times. If Tyler Van Dyke gets back on where he was going, Colby Young's going to be a huge beneficiary of that. I love it. Also going to grab another quarterback here. Let's go another Maction guy. Grab me Burt Emanuel Jr. over there at Central Michigan.
Talk about that a little bit, because that one scares me. Just not like, obviously late in the draft, but like Jace Bauer, right? How does that impact your drafting here?
Zach scares the crap out of me too. He's my 5th quarterback off the board, though. So
yeah, this at this part of the draft, it's great. You're right. If he hits, this is a huge pick for you. But do you come back, or do you think about Jace Bauer, or you don't think there's any value with him there?
Oh, I think there is value with him there. Again, like I have absolutely gone out of my way to grab Burt Emanuel in some dynasty formats because, again, if he hits, he's got 4 years of eligibility left in the Maction. And if there's one thing I know about Maction guys, typically outside of the wide receivers, they stick around forever. They know they're not going to be NFL guys, especially the running backs and the quarterbacks typically. Wide receivers, obviously we've got guys like Sky Moore, got Isaiah McCoy got drafted up pretty highly a couple years ago. Got a couple of guys that go off to do well in the NFL there, but like quarterbacks and running backs, they will stick around as long as they can. So to me, Bernie Man is a great investment in Dynasty. Jace Bauer too, he's pretty young as well. Zach, I wish you kept your mouth shut because I was kind of hoping Jace Bauer would get back to me, but now you put it into the minds of everybody listening. Nah, that's all good. All right, Zach, you took Eric All. One of us is going to be right about the Iowa tight end situation.
What's that?
I said one of us is going to be right about the Iowa tight end situation.
And there have been times where they've had two good tight ends. So,
absolutely.
It just feels like it. Kind of back to your point, system, right? Maybe he doesn't hit, but maybe he does here. It's I actually might like All better because of where you can get him in drafts, even though I think he's probably tight end 2 this year. But I just like if he's my tight end 3, 4 on a team, I feel really, really good about that.
Yeah, no, and like the other part of it is that he came over with Cade McNamara from Michigan. They're roommates. There's obviously some good connection there. So I think that what's likely going to happen is I think Lachey will be more consistent week to week, but Eric All is going to have some big weeks. And I think that's a great pickup for you there in the 23rd round as your third tight end. You said it yourself, you kind of neglected the position for a while. But I think between McLaughlin and All, you picked up 2 pretty good guys here at the end that are great shots.
I was really hoping. I like Mazzotti too. So that system has a pretty solid tight end, and he's one of those guys that towards the end of last year, like the last 4 or 5 weeks of the year or something, he turned it on. He was getting like a touchdown every game, I think, except one maybe. But he's another guy that I kind of like late here for the tight ends. I also kind of like the Gums pick as a late tight end.
Oh yeah.
So that's a pretty solid pick this late. I think you can get in a best ball format, there's some tight ends that you can get a little bit later that you could find some real value in.
Oh, I definitely there's a ton of fun upside guys here late. I'm probably going to take at least one more tight end. And some systems you can definitely invest in here as well at tight end, like just to name a few off the top of my head here. Again, Oregon, there's still guys here. Wyoming, Utah, Pitt, Boston College, Texas A&M. Like these are teams that have produced high-end tight ends in the past here. So I feel pretty good about investing in some tight ends here late. Brett Ponyi asked in the chat here, how high are you guys on Roman Hemby? The head coach and the schedule scare Brett. Zachary, are you scared about Roman Hemby this year?
I'm not scared. I think he's going to be one of those guys. Like, I really like him in best ball for sure. I'm probably a little bit lower in like a CFF redraft. I think the system is going to be good. I don't know. I think a lot of people, it seems like he's kind of right around that 35-ish running back when he's going in these drafts. It's a little high for me, but I think, again, he's going to have, I think there's some value there. I'm not 100% sold on it though. Mm-hmm. But I think he's one of those, he's kind of in that mix of running backs when you're sitting here drafting and you just see, you have like 10 running backs in your queue and you kind of like them all. And he's kind of in that group for me.
Well, somebody's going crazy in the chat with the emotes. Somebody found the emote button. So I'm curious to see who that is. Somebody's saying money, money, money. I guess somebody thinks that one of the draft picks that were just made was fantastic. Jeff Sims there, Mr. Zachary Hall.
Yeah,
what do you think about him? He's been somebody I've been hearing a lot of people say is a great late round pick here. What do you think about him?
So it's kind of a homer pick because I'm from Nebraska, so follow it closely.
Go
I just
Huskers.
Yeah, man. I just think the dual threat ability, he's gonna be. They brought him in. That's the guy they wanted, because of the offense that I think they want to run this year. They want to run the quarterback a little bit. Injury is a concern for sure. Um, I think the positive and maybe the negative, the offensive line is not good. I think it'll be a little better than last year, but that's not saying much. So he's gonna. I think they're gonna use him. He's gonna run. I think really he's going to be a guy that they use in the red zone a lot too. So I think that's where a lot of his production is going to be. I don't know if his yards will really stand out, but I think he's going to be one of the guys that scores for that offense. And it's hard to trust the running back situation. And I don't know how great they feel about it. I think they like him. They don't love him, and they love Jeff Sims. So I just feel like they brought him in because he's a guy that they feel like he can score when they get down in the red zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And he chased off Casey Thompson over there, so clearly the staff feels pretty ready to go with him. I like him late here as an option. All right, thank God Jace Bauer made it back to me. I'm going to take both of those guys just to lock up that position because they're both dual threat guys. It's not like there's a huge drop off if Bauer becomes the guy. I like Bert Emanuel a bit more. But, just lock up that position. Pretty sure that puts me... Oh, nope, we're good. Not a ton of... 3 QBs on week 9. That'll be fun. Anyway, let me go ahead and grab a running back. You went Homer. I'm going to go Homer too here. Let me get some Kendall Milton, running back out of Georgia. If his hammies stay healthy, he is a 1,000-yard back this year. That is the consistent that's the consistent word I've been hearing out of Georgia camps for a while now. He was set to have a big year last year, just couldn't stay healthy. They convinced him to come back another year here. I'm willing to take the shot on him here in the 25th round. He's going to be part of an offense that's going to be a top 10 offense again next year, even if he doesn't reach 1,000-yard back, or even if he doesn't reach 1,000 yards. He is going to be the go-to goal line back for Georgia. When they get down there at the goal line, they're not giving it to Carson Beck to run it in as a QB sneak. They're not going to give it to Dejon Edwards. They're going to give it to Kendall Milton to get that 1 yard. So he's going to have a ton of touchdown opportunity there. I feel very good about that in the 25th round.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, you're back in the clock here, Zach.
All right, so this is another guy. There's I don't know. I feel like there could be some upside here. I have Bucky Irving as the RB1, but still, I feel like Whittington could have some good weeks. So that's kind of one of those. Hoping for a little upside here late in the draft.
All right, let's see. A couple questions in the chat. Brett says, "Why does everything UCLA CFF related scare me this year?" Because there's just a lot of questions, Brett. There's no certainty with UCLA this year, so that's definitely going to be one of the teams I will be the most interested in when it comes to fall camp reports.
Yeah, because they're by far one of the best CFF systems for us, right? You're going to have a great RB1. Your quarterback's going to have value. The wide receiver 1 is usually somebody you want on your roster. He might not be a top end guy, but he's going to be a guy that you can have in your lineup. So yeah, I always hate it when those good systems are kind of going through this turnover where, hey, there's some new guys coming in, but for sure, if we miss on who we think it's going to be, those are the guys that week 1 waivers, right? Like that's where he's trying to get. I like the Kiner pick there.
I was just about to bring that up. It's a great post-hype sleeper, I think.
And I wish I would have taken him instead. I just totally missed him in my when I was looking at my stuff. So that's a good pick.
No, and Satterfield's produced some really good running backs in the past for CFF. Like, again, think of Javian Hawkins just a couple years ago in that Louisville offense. Like, he was absolutely fantastic. So that's a great pick there, Jacob. Austin asked in the chat, how are we feeling about Grayson McCall? Last year, he proved he was their offense. So what's his upside / reality? It's a bit hard to tell considering that, why am I blanking on his name all of a sudden? Just went to Jamie Chadwell has left for Liberty. So you would think they're going to try to utilize a lot of the same stuff over there. But again, he tried to transfer out. There was no denying he tried to transfer out. It's just that there were some grade issues there that kept him from really going anywhere. So
Yeah,
I feel like his upside's still good because he is a dual threat guy and he is playing in the Sun Belt. I just don't know if it's gonna be quite what we've seen the last couple of years.
yeah, I definitely that's one guy, and it hurts me because I have him in my dynasty league, thinking he was gonna be one of the guys, but Travis Trickett does better with a dual threat guy for sure, but it's still not. It's just not where I think you want it to be if you have taken him in a dynasty, and even he's probably okay with where the people are taking him now, but I still feel like it might be a little bit too high for him. I just think it's going to drop off a little bit here this year from what we've seen.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. Again, I have him in Dynasty as well. I'm not putting him anywhere. I did actually get a trade offer for him earlier today. Couldn't quite get the value I wanted out of him, so I guess I'm still big. I guess I'm still big on him somewhat. So we'll definitely see. I like Jacob. Again, Jacob, you're doing a really good job this draft. I like the shot on the North Texas wide receiver situation there. If Eric Morris gets his way, they're going to be passing a ton over there. And that passing offense hopefully should look better when you don't have Austin Onye as your top quarterback there. But also it seems like that both Chandler Rogers and Jace Ruder, neither one of them are super inspiring when it comes to the passing game. But we'll definitely see. Zach, you take Mr. Jalen Calhoun out of Duke there. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I think so. He's a guy that he's not going to get you a ton of yards. It's half PPR, so he has devalued a little bit there because that's kind of where he made his money last year. It seemed like. I just think he's a guy that he's going to probably give you one or two, maybe three really good weeks here. I think that offense takes a step forward, but I think that schedule is tough this year. I was looking at it earlier, and it just seemed like they got some games that I don't know if we're going to see the same exact Duke we saw last year offensive wise, but just feels like there could be a little bit of value in that passing offense. I don't know if there's going to be a ton, but he's a guy that I kind of like this year.
No, I think it's a good call. I'm gonna grab a guy here who has seen an uptick in value thanks to the information we got recently out of this certain program that the guy we thought was going to be the RB1 turns out he'll be out for a couple of weeks. And I'm going to draft a running back here thinking that he is going to take that job week 1 and he ain't going to let it go even when this other guy comes back. So as soon as Zach makes his pick here, I'll quickly make mine and we'll just go from there.
Who do you think it is? I think I know who you're talking about. I want to know which running back it is though.
I'm going to go with the guy that Phil Steele had listed as RB1 there. Looked pretty good down the stretch last year.
He didn't.
You what?
Oh, nothing. I'll let you make your pick.
Give me Dwayne McNeely, running back out of Wyoming there.
I Phil still had him as RB1. Okay. I had him in my queue. I was actually I'm surprised that they lasted this long, to be honest. I thought maybe
I think others were kind of waiting to see. I think it's a lot of everybody kind of waiting to see when somebody else was going to have the balls to go ahead and make that pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's a good. If McNeely's RB1 all year, that is such good value in round 26.
I'm gonna take a leaf out of Jacob's book here. I'm gonna take a shot at this North Texas wide receiver situation as well. Give me Roderick Burns. He's burned me quite a bit the last couple of years, no pun intended, but what's one more year? I'll put some aloe on this time. Let's see. Brett says, how much do you factor head coaches when you are drafting your CFF players? System-wise, it's everything. Like, again, like, the head coach is going to determine what kind of system you're going to run most of the time. Maybe, or if he allows his offensive coordinator to run their system, like, yeah, it's going to factor in there. if it's a stability thing, like, am I looking at Neil Brown? Does Neil Brown likely getting fired sometime this year change my opinion of West Virginia players? I would say yes. Again, I'd probably be a bit more in on Garrett Green this year if I knew for a fact that Neil Brown wasn't going to get fired this year. There wasn't going to be some big seismic shift at some point during the season. Speaking of Garrett Green, there he goes.
I was gonna say, has he been drafted yet?
He has
that's
not.
those guys here late that it's like that's a good pick. He could give you some decent weeks with his. He has some upside in the run game. So
All right, Zach, you're back on the clock here. Tommy says Jared is dragging them around tonight. Just put them in a wheelbarrow already. Am I dragging people around? Is it like is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is that like I'm killing the draft, or is that like I'm just being mean to players and people? I don't know, Tommy. You're gonna have to elaborate on me for that. Dang it, Brandon. I left him on the board too long. I was kind of hoping that I could just get him as late as I want, but Malachi Jones there at Tulsa is a fantastic pick in the 27th round. They got nobody left after last year. I'm fully on board with that.
I like that pick. I also I didn't realize Corey Recker was still out there as well.
I just traded for him today in a dynasty league. I gave up. What was that?
I was gonna say it'll be interesting to see what is he going to be in that offense this year.
I'm still not sure what Butch Jones's offense is, because that first year he was there, they did pretty well. They passed for a ton of yards. Now they couldn't get the quarterback situation figured out between Hatcher and Blackman, but like between the two of them, they passed for almost 4,000 yards that year. So, and they had some really good production out of their wide receivers, Corey Rucker included. I think he goes back there. He could have a really fun year for the most part. Oh, someone having the balls to take the Wyoming run. Oh, gotcha. All right. Question from Todd Skids. First of all, welcome, Todd. Appreciate you putting a question in the chat here, sir. He says, my late round sleepers are Braden Shager, Tedros Gleason. Hold on. Oops.
Gleaton, that's the Navy QB.
Oh, the Navy QB. Okay, I thought he was misspelling Gleason at Toledo for a second. Isaiah Jacobs, interesting running back at UAB. I don't mind that as a sleeper guy. Nick McMillan out of Buffalo. That's a good call right there, Todd Skids. And then Juice Farine, the wide receiver at NC State, who still has tight end eligibility on Fantrax, the true freshman over there. He could get a role this year. Now, granted, they did just add Bradley Rosner, which, speaking of Rosner, he's come off the board. He's got to have.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, shoot. Is
he
not?
I don't see him when I type him in.
Oh, that's right. Nobody's taking a placeholder for him. Well, don't mind me. Shoot, I didn't even think of that. I'm just gonna go all the way down here. All right. Brett says, how does Henry Parrish go in the 27th round? All right. First of all, I'm going to take a placeholder here. This will be my Bradley Rosner placeholder here. I cannot believe I didn't even think about him so far. I love his landing spot over there at NC State. They needed a big body wide receiver to put on the outside. That's what Brennan Armstrong had when he was at his most successful. I think he's going to be fantastic. Chase Bryce will be my next pick here. I'll take my shot on one of my favorite wide receivers at BYU. No problem there. Again, Brett's asked, how does Henry Parrish go in the 27th round? Zach, you want to take that one? Why do you think Henry Parrish is going so late?
I don't know. I honestly haven't taken him at all. I haven't really touched much of the Miami offense. I liked your Colby Young pick because I think that could be good. Henry Parrish this late's probably good. I just don't think that running back is like. I guess I'm not super confident that it's going to be super valuable in that system. He's had some good ones over the years. I mean, Ito Smith was pretty solid. But I guess I'm not super confident in that Miami running back room, and I feel like they have a lot of running backs. They went out and got AJ Allen this
Yep.
last year. They still, I don't know the status on Trevante Citizen, but it was like had
Nobody
all.
does.
They have the freshman Fletcher
Yep.
coming in, so it's like it just feels unsettled. I don't know. I should talk with Josh because I know Josh is a big Miami guy, but like, what is that running back room even going to look like? Who's going to be RB1? So that could be why Parrish is falling. Just some uncertainty there. But yeah, that's kind of one that I haven't even touched just because I don't know what that's going to look like come week 1.
Yeah, no, I think it's fully possible that it's just full committee over there. I mean, Shane Dawson had committees at Houston as well. You didn't even mention Don Cheney Jr., who's still sticking around over there at Miami. Like, they do have just a bunch of bodies there that it feels like it's just a backed up running back room. Citizen, as far as I can tell, it's just no really reports have come out stating there's no good news reports. There's been reports that like he didn't practice in the spring hardly. He is limited when he is available. I hate to say it, but it feels like at least for now that ship has sailed for Citizen, which sucks because he looked so good going into Miami last year.
Yeah, I mean, he was supposed to be the guy, right? I mean, he was going to come in and win the job, and Hudson Card is a pretty good pick there.
If Graham Harrell actually runs an air raid at any point in his life.
Yeah. He's his when you look at kind of what he's done, it's a little bit hit and miss for sure.
All right, Zach, your final pick coming up here. First of all, I love your Ramel Keaton pick there in the 29th round. That was somebody I was considering taking here near the end just to play on system there. What are you looking at here for your last pick?
So I'm going to go tight end. And this is, again, it's another homer pick, but I think outside of Jeff Sims in that Nebraska offense, this guy is, it's another health thing. I think if he stays healthy, he could be their leading receiver at the tight end position. So I'll wait until it's my pick, but it's not
right pick. Make the right pick.
I know Gilbert just
it's not Gilbert. I would say like don't take Gilbert.
Oh, I know. I think this guy. So the last staff loved him, and then this staff loves him, and all reports in the spring from guys that were watching practices, they're like everything is just Fedoni is legit, right? He was a top. I think he was either the top tight end or second tight end in that recruiting class coming out of high school. And he's a big guy. He's a physical guy, and he's a super athletic guy. And I think he's going to be I would not be surprised if he's one of their top receivers this year, and not surprise me at all if he leads in touchdowns, because I think he's going to be a red zone target. So
he was the number one tight end prospect in the 2021 class, a top 50 player overall for that class. You're betting on talent there. I think it's awesome. Great final pick. And it happens to be a homer pick as well. So it's everything you need.
Yeah. What are you thinking with your last one?
I'm thinking tight end. I have I have 3. Probably need to boost that up. I'm probably going to go pure system guy here. He looked good at the end of last year. Probably not the best strategy in the world for CFF wise for me to take 2 guys from this system, because it's typically not great, but kind of like Iowa, they're good at 2 things: tight end production and running backs. So I'll probably take another guy here as soon as Zach makes his pick. I'll throw a question over to you, Zach, for this one. What do we make of Oklahoma State CFF wise this year? Like, Gundy may have lost the locker room, but like it's been great for CFF in the past. Like,
that's another one. It's the same. it's different, but kind of the same as UCLA, right? Where we just don't even know, but you know that there's value in that system. I mean, we aren't even sure QB1, is it going to be Bowman? If it's Bowman, I don't love it. Ollie Gordon at running back. I think you've talked about this a lot, and I've heard it a lot. It's like there just doesn't seem to be a lot of confidence in him. The receivers, I don't know. I just there's so much up in the air. I've stayed away from the whole thing, but again, it's like there's part of me that doesn't want to. I want to grab a piece of it, piece of that offense, but I just don't know who makes the most sense right now.
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to help out somebody to
You're
take
good.
a placeholder because he wants to take Travis Hunter with his final pick.
Got it.
I'm just gonna say take anyone named Hunter.
Yeah, that's a good pick. That's a good pick here. I mean, he's like you talked about it earlier in the show. He's one of Dion's guys, right? So is he going to be a focal point in that offense? I would not surprise me one bit if that was the case.
Not at all. It wouldn't surprise me either. To answer the Oklahoma State question and everything, I've taken shots on Jaden Bray at the end of drafts, post-hype sleeper kind of guy. It's just so hard to believe in that team right now.
Yeah, I thought about Stribling too. They brought him in, and that was always interesting to me. He's not a guy I'd be super high on, but maybe a guy like take late round, maybe one of the last rounds for them. Did Bray? He went, didn't he? He had to have gone.
I don't believe so. Yeah, no, he's still on the board.
Oh, is he? Yeah, so that would be another guy that Bray. Presley's the guy that's getting drafted right now, right?
I think so. Yeah, Presley came off the board.
I don't know. I feel like I like Bray more than Presley, maybe, but
it's been that outside receiver that typically becomes that CFF guy. Presley, it's like we know exactly what Presley is. He's gonna be the solid number 2 guy, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Actually, that goes directly into what we're going to talk about here at the end of the stream here, Zach. We just completed 30 rounds here. There are still some guys on the board that we are probably very happy, or that we would be happy with going if we went 5 rounds later here. At quarterback, who stands out to you as guys that are still on the board that you would have been happy to take in the next couple of rounds?
Yeah, so just kind of looking through who's available. I know this is one guy, I know you don't like him, but I think I'm a little bit higher on him. Chandler Rogers. I know there's a lot about like the Eric Morris offense. What is that real? Like, but that's one guy I think taking a shot at late. It could pay off if you did that. DJ usually goes. I'm a little shocked that he didn't get picked. I don't love him this year, but I do think there is that rushing upside that you could see some benefit from.
He did finish as a top 20. Is it top 20 wide receiver last year? Or wide receiver? What am I talking about? This is what happens when you get me speaking past 10 o'clock at night. DJU, QB 20 last year. So like again, that rushing upside's there.
Yeah. I think the big one for me that I've taken is Shager at Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of one guy. I like him late just because the potential with that offense.
Yeah, I like that too. A couple of guys that are on the board I'm kind of surprised by. Again, Cooper Lega, dual threat guy, Blake Anderson offense. Again, he was not great last year, but give him a full offseason of reps. I think he's going to be one of the most improved quarterbacks from last year. Granted, again, his touchdown interception ratio definitely has to improve if he wants to keep that job. But even still, dual threat guy, Mountain West. I think somebody should have taken a shot on him. Keaton Slovis over at BYU. I think BYU is going to be a team that is going to be forced to pass the ball a ton. He strikes me as a pretty safe 21 to 23 fantasy points per week kind of guy. So if you're looking for that safe floor for your quarterback room, I'm surprised nobody took that shot there. And then looking at the rest of it, nobody really surprises me as not having come off the board. What about running backs, Zach? Any running backs kind of stick out to you, surprising you?
One guy I had on my queue that I just never pulled the trigger on was DJ Giddens at Kansas State. I know they got Ward coming in, but good reports from Giddens as far like he was okay last year. So I don't know. There's a little bit that maybe he could push for that starting job. So he was one guy that I had. Looking through the list, kind of what's left. Nobody's really sticking out too much. Outside of him, I think one guy, and I don't know what this room is going to look like, and it's probably more of a running back by committee. But Zach Evans at Minnesota intrigues me a little bit. I thought he was good in the spring game. I don't try and put a ton of stock into that, but I think it's definitely something you can consider. I don't think it should probably drive the decision, but you can consider it. So he's a guy that I like him late, and I don't think he went.
No, he definitely did not. I'd have to see where Sean Tyler went as well. I do like Zach Evans quite a bit. I think if there is a running back in that room that can be relied upon to do what Mo Ibrahim did, he's the guy because he just has the build better than pretty much anybody else in that room. But I think it's going to be full committee this year. They've been pretty big on the fact they want to throw the ball more and they want to move away from what they did to Mo. So I totally get it. A guy that sticks out to me at running back that I'm surprised did not go, given all of the rumors over there at Iowa State, is Cartavius Norton. Guy who looked really good as a freshman last year. We were kind of hoping would kind of overtake Brock. They were just so bad overall that it didn't really matter. But like, if Deckers and Brock are out this year, Iowa State, I think, has to rely on the run game to keep things going. JJ Cole looks sounds pretty good as a true freshman, but again, he's a true freshman. So Cartavius Norton, second year, I'm down to take the shot there. Anybody else at running back? Again, nobody that really surprises me. I think this draft did a pretty good job in terms of finding some guys. Maybe CJ Beasley, maybe Reese White, some of those guys that are over at Coastal Carolina. Hopefully you take a shot on a guy. Maybe they become the guy, kind of like a CJ Marable a couple of years ago. Tommy Harvey has a quick question regarding running backs. And Shane, I see your question about Hornsby and Finley. I tried to kind of go over them in the draft room so that you could see them. Hornsby went in the 14th round and Finley went in the 30th round. Anyway, Tommy Harvey asks, do you see DK Joyner winning the running back job at South Carolina? What do you think, Zach? Because he has wide receiver eligibility right now in Fantrax. So if he is the RB1 at South Carolina, that could be a potential cheat code right there.
Yeah, that's probably the only way I would ever consider taking him, but if he wins that job. But I'm not, again, kind of back to when we talked about them with Spencer. I'm not sold on that OC hire. And we just don't see a lot of value from a guy that really from his background. So I'm not sold. But again, if he wins that job with the dual eligibility, it probably bumps him up a little bit. But I don't think I would still be super high on him.
No, absolutely fair enough. I've been taking a couple shots at the end of like supplemental drafts and Dynasty, just because again, there's a potential cheat code there if he is truly the number one guy. Let's move on to wide receivers here, Zach. Any wide receivers kind of standing out to you? I got a list of a couple guys here that stand out to me, but I want to hear your guys first.
Yeah, so probably going back to Oklahoma State guys, thought maybe they would. I know this is not we're unsure, but I thought maybe TJ Sheffield might get picked up here.
He was one of my guys.
Yeah, so I just feel like that's I feel like I've seen him go in most drafts, so that's one. I'm not really seeing anybody else that sticks out too much as I kind of scroll through. Yeah, I don't know. Who do you have, Jared?
I got Josiah Freeman out of Fresno State. I'm surprised that I didn't see any Fresno State wide receivers come off the board. Maybe somebody who's listening in the chat can correct me if they did see him. Again, he's a guy that got a little bit of hype earlier this offseason when Jake Hayner specifically said, shout out to Eric Froton for getting this, he was the next guy up. He was the guy to watch out for. So I'm surprised that through 30 rounds, I know his hype's kind of died down a little bit because, again, like the reports out of camp aren't quite matching that initial hype, but like nobody took a shot on him in the 30th round. I'm kind of surprised about that. Jaquan Jackson out of Tulane. Guys, Michael Pratt's a pretty good quarterback. The offensive coordinator there who came over from Central Missouri has featured wide receiver ones in the past. Jaquan Jackson is probably the most tenured guy there at Tulane in the receiving room. I think he's going to get a pretty good year here. Talked about Jaden Bray. Neither one of the East Carolina guys came off the board here. I mean, Cy Hatfield is still on the board. Jalen Johnson, the transfer from Georgia, is still on the board here. Like, both of those guys had their moments last year. So I'm surprised, again, nobody took the shot on that system. Granted, the Pirates could be awful this year. That's a legitimate chance. But at the same time, I'm surprised nobody took the shot there.
What about, CJ Daniels at Liberty?
Yeah, I don't think he was taken.
Is he, I know he was injured. I guess I don't know. That feels like that could be a spot where there could be somebody from that Liberty. I mean, you're getting, the coastal offense. So there's been some value there. So I had CJ Daniels kind of pegged as that wide receiver one.
I think it's a great call.
Did much though.
I mean, I've seen a couple people talking about CJ Daniels. I think if I recall correctly, there was some hype from some of the beat reporters on him as well as somebody who was standing out. So maybe that's kind of where it's coming from right there. Austin, to answer your question, Seth Hennigan was drafted. Let me see if I can find him real quick. He is, where did it be highlighted here somewhere? There he is. Yeah, 24th round, Hennigan came off the board. All right, last but not least here, Zach, got any tight ends still on the board that kind of surprised you? For the most part, I got really nobody here that shocks me. They're still on the board. Maybe Shane Calhoun, maybe Rivaldo Fairweather.
I also like Harold Fannin.
Good call.
Super high on him, but he's a guy that maybe late round could take a shot on.
Isaac Rex out of BYU, another one that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm not really seeing.
Yeah, I think we covered tight end pretty well in this draft. Last thing we'll cover here, Zach, is something that I've been trying to do a bit more with these at the end. Just as a quick recap, we spent 2 hours drafting these teams. How do you feel about your team, Zach? Looking at it overall, what do you think?
It's, again, this was my first non-slow draft, so the pressure of the clock. This is more tricky to do than you think when you're talking through stuff, and then all of a sudden you're on the clock and you haven't really seen who's been off the board. But overall, I like the quarterbacks. I like Plumlee for this. Preston Stone, I'm pretty high on this year. I think he's going to have a pretty good year. Schrader, I like Schrader a lot. I think I got some decent depth there too. I probably feel I don't love my running back room with Shipley. Martinez, I like that Martinez value I got. Ontario Brown, I think could be. I took Mayan Williams. I think he's going to give you some weeks, but again, he could be in that share with Henderson. I liked my receivers. I liked how those panned out with Harrison, Cowing, Adams, Tyron Smith. I even think Harvey from Old Dominion is going to be a guy that
was a great pick in the 12th.
Where we think he could be. Not that I don't think he's going to be that top tier elite guy, but I think he's going to be pretty solid. So I feel best about my receivers just looking through it. And then at tight end, I'm all right. I like Brant Keithy at Utah. I think that's going to be good. McLaughlin and all. And then, like I said, Fedoni, I think he's going to be he's kind of my sleeper tight end. And I know it seems like a homer pick, but he would be my sleeper tight end if I wasn't a Nebraska fan, just because of that upside.
No, absolutely. I don't think it's really all that much of a homer pick at all, dude. I think you did a great job some of the values here. Brumfield in the 22nd, I love. Again, DJ Irons is a fun one, but Daniel George in the 15th, Garrett Schrader 13th. Like, you did a really good job scooping up a lot of the value here. And I honestly wish I gave you more time to discuss some of your picks, because I remember seeing Brumfield come off the board and be like, dang, whoever made that was a good pick. Didn't realize it was you until later.
Yeah,
like you said, like when you're doing this live, you just don't pick up on who's drafting who.
Yeah, man, you miss so much. I mean, I'm typing in names just to see if guys are available, but this was fun. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed this.
Absolutely. What would you give what grade would you give your team?
Oh man, this team I'm gonna say a B plus. I don't love my running back situation, so
B plus is solid.
Yeah, I think I like the quarterbacks. I really like the receivers. Running back, yeah, I'd say a B plus on mine.
I'm not gonna lie, this is probably one of my favorite teams I have drafted this year, because I think a lot of value fell to me pretty early here. Starting off with Malachi Corley, always nice, but then being able to lock up both top tier running backs and top tier wide receivers made me feel really good. My first 5 picks, this might be my favorite start I've had in a draft pretty much all year. Quarterbacks, I think I like a little less than I typically do, mostly because in this draft I was kind of forcing myself to take some guys that I hadn't taken shots on before. I still like it. Again, don't get me wrong. Jefferson, Rourke, and Howard, all 3 of those guys are dual threat guys. Taking the shot on the Maction or the Central Michigan boys later on, I feel pretty good about that. But like the value is getting a running back and wide receiver throughout the draft, I feel very confident in. And then tight ends, again, grab Lachey. I've grabbed Lachey 1,000 times, but then to get Nesbitt, who typically goes off like 3, 4, 5 rounds before the 19th round typically, great value fell to me there. And then I grabbed one of my favorites. Can I call him a sleeper tight end? I've talked about him enough that I feel like he's not a sleeper anymore, but I grabbed Holker there as my 3rd tight end. Feel really good about that. And the fact that I grabbed Rosner in the 28th round, because I completely forgot that he was not available, so nobody was thinking about him. I am good to go there. Brett, to answer your question about Nebraska, considering that Zach drafted Jeff Sims and Thomas Fedone, I think there is your value at Nebraska for CFF. Zach, do you have a preferred running back at Nebraska, or do you think it's committee?
I think it's committee. I know they talked about Gabe Ervin a lot. I think if you go back and watch any of the games with both Grant and Ervin, you're going to see Grant is the better running back. So I don't know. Ervin's supposed to be super fast, but I think they're going to run both of them out there. And I think, too, Sims is going to get carries in the red zone, and it's going to take away from some of those guys, because those guys really – Grant was good last year against bad defenses, but when they started to play some of those Big Ten defenses, he couldn't find any room, and they just could not rely on him really to punch it in if they needed to. So it's committee. I think Ervin probably runs out with RB1, but I think Grant eventually takes it over because he gets back in the good graces of the coaches, and they just split it the rest of the way. I think, too, this has no impact on CFF, but Ramir Johnson, he's actually my favorite running back in that room, but he's just not as big. Mm-hmm. He gets tackled easier, but he looks like the best runner, and he catches passes. So if he does start to pop a little bit in PPR, I think he could be a guy that maybe you're probably still not going to want, but if anything, he would be the value.
I'll be real, I completely forgot Ramir Johnson existed. Well, Zach, it has been absolutely fantastic having you on. It is an absolute pleasure to finally meet you, interact with you, dude. You're an incredibly smart guy. I'm so happy to have you back in the CFF industry family. I'm excited to see what you guys do over there. Again, if you want to give a quick 30-second summary for people who may not have been here at the beginning of the stream, to just remind everybody the kind of stuff you'll work on, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so over at Fantasy Points now with Josh, I'll have my rankings out here soon. I know if Josh listens to this, he's probably like, you've been telling me that for like 2 weeks, but I'm going to have my rankings here soon. This season, we're going to hit some DFS. We're going to have props. We're going to have a matchup report that's really cool. That's going to help guys kind of figure out who to play, who not to play. We'll have rankings, projections. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to try and do this year. So I'm excited. Thanks for having me, Jared. This was a lot of fun. I'm really excited to get back into it. But yeah, this was awesome. So I appreciate you asking me on.
Hey, thank you, Zach. Again, you're a great guy, and it was a pleasure interacting with you tonight. I am looking forward to inviting you back on the show in the future, dude, because again, you're great. For those of you who are listening, really appreciate you guys tuning in, especially those of you who've been giving us questions in the chat, giving us plenty to talk about throughout the night. It has been absolutely fantastic, as always, hanging out with you guys. In terms of what we got going on over here at Campus of Canton, we got the CFF guide out there, only $20. Breakdowns on all 133 FBS teams, as well as player profiles for 48 QBs, 60 running backs, 72 wide receivers, and 24 tight ends, and rankings that go even further than that. You got other stuff in there like sample mock drafts, ADP trend analysis, coaching system analysis, and team schedule analysis. This is perfect because the ticker tape at the very bottom has all of this stuff read out for me right there. All for only $20. Absolutely awesome stuff there. Really appreciate you guys all listening. The season's really right around the corner. I can't wait to get started. It's going to be here even faster than you guys realize it. Until then, really appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed week. See you guys next Sunday.